Yesterday I made a video about Russia with Bernie in the title. It was essential for us to be on the same page for this, so if you haven't watched the first one, go back and see it. So what the heck does this have to do with Bernie? As you may know, I have been making videos accusing the Russia of using CIA statements of Russian political hacking and trolling. Things didn't become as clear as to how deep this was until the recent vilification of Cory Booker. People from the alt-right or Bernie bro, Bernie or busters that I have had brief discussions with have somehow decided that Cory Booker is their new most hated enemy and is the ultimate establishment member now that Hillary is gone from the scene. Which puzzled me. Suddenly they're juxtaposing him against Bernie as an evil, dirty villain versus an untouchable saint. It came to a head when Bernie put up an amendment that he expected to fail, as it was more a Hail Mary pass, that allowed people to import Canadian drugs. Cory Booker voted against the measure, as he lives in a state where the pharmaceuticals are a large enough job market that voting for cheaper pharmaceuticals would straight up tank his political career without a more complex replacement policy, just like when the supposedly wonderful Bernie did when he voted for the completely wasteful, pointless F-35 that still can't fly in the rain after billions in R&D. However, the fake outrage machine on the internet was making something out of nothing politically. The trade complexities of pharmaceuticals in general is rather insane, so an added amendment is not even nearly enough to allow imports from Canada. It wasn't until this point that everything clicked about what the hell happened in the 2016 election, and maybe worldwide, including potentially the European elections and Brexit. Around the time of the 2016 election, Putin made the claim that Donald Trump was flamboyant, which translated incorrectly to bright, and Trump lauded Putin, signaling he was petty, vain, and easy to manipulate. Putin already hated Hillary as Secretary of State, thanks to sanctions the Obama administration had against Russia for the Ukraine invasion and manipulating oil prices, causing a recession, and wanted her beat. The rest of the Republicans were pretty anti-Ruski as well, so there was really no point in interfering until Cheeto Mussolini came onto the stage and Putin knew he had to get him elected. They used the KGB know-how and helped perpetuate the myth of Bernie. Now I'm going to piss a lot of people off here, but please hear me out. Not to degrade Bernie, but he wasn't the perfect candidate everyone believed he was. I know how painful it is to have a candidate you really like lose. I've had that happen in more elections than I care to count. And that candidate can feel like part of your identity, but hero worship can blind you to their humanity. The Oppo research released in the bottom bar had tons of things the right and Hillary could have attacked him on. Hillary did not. He is a politician and does pragmatic things that may seem sleazy to the pure idealist, no more or less than any other politician. His strongest point is his ability to explain domestic socialist ideas in a way people want to hear, and he was apparently a really good mayor. He wasn't good at getting laws passed, as during his entire time in Congress, he wasn't able to get any piece of legislation through on his own, and relied on tacking on amendments in the vain hope they would pass. He worked with John McCain on a bipartisan bill for VA benefits, and couldn't even get that passed. He knew very little about foreign policy, as the debates showed, which pretty much killed any support I had from him, and probably voted more against stuff than for stuff. This brought back many of the former Ron Paulers into his fold, who found Rand Paul to be too much of a douche, which is saying something. Then somehow on the internet, Bernie suddenly became this bastion of goodness and righteousness, but he also became a persecuted David character, even though he went negative first. People fail to realize, because many of them weren't old enough at the time, if Bernie had run in 2008 where there were 8 candidates and 4 strong viable candidates, he would have been viewed probably on the same level as Mike Gravel. But thanks to the fact that he was the only option aside from Hillary, who had a 30-year smear campaign against her that made people subconsciously hate and distrust her, even though, under her husband, we had the most prosperous economy in our lifetime, Bernie looked like a god among men. Then using WikiLeaks, Russians hacked and leaked the DNC info, showing that just like when Obama ran, there was a clear bias in the DNC for Hillary, and Obama still won, beating the odds and convincing the superdelegates to vote for him. Though Obama actually did things to help people in his party, while Bernie did nothing for the party and actually took funds from the Vermont Democratic Party as an independent because they didn't want to run someone against him or get a spoiler candidate. But with a blindness of hindsight and ignorance of basic civics, the myth that the noble Bernie was being persecuted and the system was completely rigged was easily propagated, especially on the internet, in comment sections and internet bubbles. Fake news helped as well, which may or may not have had anything to do with Russia, but the system of information platforms allowed true clickbait to spread on the left and right, including some in the Hillary camp. A former British spy uncovered and handed over documents to the FBI Director James Comey, which included many activities we still don't know about because he won't release them, involving troubling things between Trump and Russia. And instead of letting Congress know, he sat on it until January while releasing a fake announcement about Hillary's emails a week before the election, adding the last slash in the death by 1,000 cuts against her. Now the Trump administration is using private emails and people seem cool with it, while Trump tweets from a non-encrypted Samsung phone that can be so easily hacked it's insane. They are now already beginning to use all the same tactics to split what is left of the Democratic Party to hate Cory Booker for voting against an oversimplified bill Bernie never expected to pass as a dialectic move that would have killed a lot of jobs in his state, and Bernie himself said it's not a big deal and completely understands why he did it. People supposedly on the extreme left have already decided that Booker and even Elizabeth Warren are enemies of Bernie, even though Bernie is not going to run for president again. You will see them dig up any BS reason to vilify them for doing the exact same things Bernie does, but since it's not him, it's evil. This video is a collection of pieces of post-election videos I never posted. I'm finally to the point of forgiving Bernie. Without his rather hypocritical attacks on Hillary after saying he wasn't going to go negative, Trump wouldn't have had a chance. However, under normal circumstances, Bernie's attacks on Hillary would have not been enough of an impact to elect this horrible, thieving misogynist we now have who is ready to fillet Putin and disband NATO. Bernie Sanders has been used by the Russians and the alt-right trolls pretending to be the far left to split the Democratic Party, and Americans denied civics classes and training in determining if a source is legitimate or not, which is literally our Muggle version of Defense Against the Dark Arts, and replaced with standardized testing, believed it thinking they are actually part of their crew and one of them, while Bernie begged his people to support Hillary. He was baffled and completely thrown by this massive Bernie or bust cult that had centered around him once the dust settled from the primary, and nothing he could do would squelch the still repeated laughable idea that the DNC rigged the primaries and stole the election from him, that spread around him because the average person doesn't know basic civics. 3 state parties did some shady stuff, and in one of those, the Bernie campaign did some shady stuff too, but nowhere near enough to make him lose by 3 million votes. This is a well-worn lie that was enough to keep half of millennials at home this election. The use of Bernie as a god of perfection as opposed to the rest of the dirty Democrats is already being used again by the alt-right to discredit and divide the rest of the Democrats. We must be very aware of these tactics or Trump and the Republicans will win over and over again thanks to increasing gerrymandering, voter suppression, money in local politics, and the Electoral College. It's going to take more and more overwhelming votes just for Democrats to win anywhere. More people vote Democrat in state and House elections and still can't win, and Hillary won by 3 million votes and still lost. Twice I have mentioned this concept, and 2 completely different Bernie bros on completely different forums out of the blue have claimed verbatim that my argument was on an Alex Jones level conspiracy, which means they have already coordinated this kind of backup story. Conspiracy can be real, especially when you can clarify motive and prior track records. As a Forbes article points out in the bottom bar, Russia may not have hacked the voting machines, but it hacked the minds of the American people. The thing Bernie wanted most was for his supporters to get out and vote down ticket, even if they didn't vote for Hillary, but people couldn't be bothered to get out and vote down ticket, which would have given him a lot more power in the Senate, which shows they weren't real Bernie supporters, just ignorant, naive people with a messiah complex or alt-righters pretending to be Bernie supporters. Now people are freaking out because Elizabeth Warren and Sherrod Brown approved Ben Carson for HUD, and according to the Constitution, if they can find no conflict of interest or disqualifying feature, even if they disagree with him politically, they have to approve. It's why confirming cabinet appointments until Obama came around used to be just standard practice, and it was a rarity to have objections raised. Please actually listen to Bernie and what he says, and ignore what his fake fan club tells you. They are just trolling you, or you will literally just get regression in our politics because you wanted everything and refused to compromise.